1, 2, 3.
Kate Mila Falls, you're very welcome along to the Brian and Kieran Warfield podcast, the ramblings of two Irish balladeers, featuring Brian Warfield of the Fierce and Mighty Wolf Tones and his son Kieran, that's me, of the band Catalpa, and also of the Bandwagon Bus, Dublin's only musical ballad tour on wheels. So sit back, relax, grab a tea, coffee, beer or wine or whatever takes your fancy as we go rambling through life's misty foggy dew, through stories, songs, history, politics, life on the road and just a general bit of crack.
Went one night and Julie and patrolling, oh, and they met to go upon the road and took up a meal and strolling, oh. And when bayonets fixed, they sally fought and cut them by the ways, and oh, and then they swore a mighty oath they'd send them off to prison, oh. Hey, go, three, car, a higgledy-giggle, let go of me, legger, I'll buck you with me horn, oh. Hey, diddly-dee, let go of me, or I'll leave you bruised and torn, oh. Oh, mercy, sir, the goat replied, come, let me tell me story, oh. I am no rogue, no ribbon man, no crappy wig or Tory, oh. And the guilty not of any crime or petty high treason, no. Me tribe is wanted at this time, for this is ranting season, oh. Hey, go, three, car, a higgledy-giggle, let go of me, legger, I'll puck you with me horn, no. Hey, diddly-dee, let go of me, or I'll leave you bruised and torn, no. Oh, it is in vain for to complain or give your tongue such bridle, oh. You're absent from your dwelling places, orderly and idle, oh. And your hoary locks will not prevail your sublime orientation, oh. For Peel's Act will you transport on your own information, oh. Hey, go, three, car, a higgledy-giggle, let go of me, legger, I'll puck you with me horn, no. Hey, diddly-dee, let go of me, or I'll leave you bruised and torn, no. No penal laws I did transgress by either combination, no. I have no certain place of rest, no home or habitation, no. But Bansha is my dwelling place where I was bred and born, no. Descended from an honest race, that's all the trade I've learned, no. Hey, go, three, car, a higgledy-giggle, let go of me, legger, I'll puck you with me horn, no. Hey, diddly-dee, let go of me, or I'll leave you bruised and torn, no. Consequence be what it will appeal as power I let you know. I'll handcuff you in all events and march you off to Bride below. And should there you rogue, you can't deny before a judge or jury, oh. Intimidation with your horns and threaten them even fury, oh. Hey, go, three, car, a higgledy-giggle, let go of me, legger, I'll puck you with me horn, no. Hey, diddly-dee, let go of me, or I'll leave you bruised and torn, no. I'll make no doubt but put you drunk with whiskey, rum or brandy, oh. You won't have such gallons spunk to be so well and manly, oh. For you readily would let me pass if I had money handy, oh. For to treat you to a patching glass, then I'd be a dandy, oh. A higgledy-giggle, let go of me, legger, I'll puck you with me horn, no. Hey, diddly-dee, let go of me, or I'll leave you bruised and torn, no.
The Peeler and the Goat from 1965 Fontana album by the Wolf Tones called The Foggy Dew. So welcome along to the 8th episode.
My God, 8 already, that's it's amazing.
Yeah, don't be long about going up. And The Peeler and the Goat, that great song.
Yeah, it was, and originally we got that from my grandmother, Annie Cunningham, as she was born from Sandymount in Dublin. Her father was a fisherman.
Very posh. Sandymount's very posh. Or was that just now? It wasn't posh back then, was it?
Well, they had a posh house, I guess. They had a number 7 Tritonville Road there in Sandymount.
Oh, that is very posh.
Yeah, but he was a fisherman, and he had 2 boats running out of Sandymount. One was called the Primrose, and the other one's called the Mary Ann.
Mary Ann.
And the Mary Ann and the Primrose. And so, yeah, he fished. He fished. I guess there was. I don't know whether they were motorised or they wouldn't have been motorised, but they might have been steam. I don't know.
But you could probably make a good living out of fishing back then. You know, the seas weren't overfished and didn't have the EU boats coming in and all the Spanish trawlers coming in with their huge big nets and producing and just.
They didn't have to go far, I guess. But you know, it must have made a very, very good living because they were quite wealthy, and you know, he had a large family, and my grandmother was one of the elder ones, but. No, she wasn't. She was about middle. I think there was 7 or 8 children. Wow. But she was she married a Cunningham then. She was a Byrne. Annie Byrne was her name, and her father, peculiar enough, was Tommy Byrne. And they'd call him the Skipper Byrne, and well-known character around Sandymount, I guess, and very successful in his business. But my gran, she had a great collection of songs, and one of the songs she gave us was The Peeler and the Goat. And she used to sing it. I always remember when we were kids, long before I took up music, she used to sing the bit, heggledy-geggle, let go and be legger, I cup you with me heart and soul. Diddly-da.
But it's a great line.
Yeah.
It is a great line. I used to love it as a kid. I think it probably attracts all kids to it, like, you know, because it is such a great line. Like, you know.
Yeah. And I can't remember seeing it in the book. I've seen The Peeler and the Goat, but different versions of it. But that particular version we got from Gran. And I remember it distinctly from when I was a child. But the great song, and we were brought down to Bansha for a concert at one stage in the early stage of our lives, and to put on a concert down there because we had sung that song, the Bansha Peelers.
Yeah, when you were sick that time, and I replaced you on stage for them 2 gigs. Yeah. I think one of the gigs was in Golden in Tipperary, which is not far from it. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that was yeah.
Probably was.
Bansha.
It's between Kerr and Tipperary town.
Yeah.
But the song was originally written by Darby Ryan from Bansha in the 19th century, so it was a very early song.
Yeah, it was. And you see, I guess the Peelers came in, the police force, a new police force that was brought into Ireland, and it was a kind of a militia. It really wasn't a police force. They were armed with carbines. They had the military set up. They lived in military-type barracks. They weren't allowed to get married. They had to get permission. If they wanted to get married, they had to get permission to marry. They lived in kind of remote areas to keep the Irish down, you might say, and they figured to keep the rule of law, but the rule of law wasn't Ireland's rule of law. It was England's rule of law, and they were really assisting in subduing the Irish people.
Yeah, Irish people didn't like them because they asked a lot more questions than the military.
Well, they did, and you see, because they were Irish, mainly Irish, they knew the Irish psychic, so they were able to, they were more dangerous than in a sort of a detective type way in detecting people, but they were brought in, to keep law in the estates that the tenants might be rising up against the landlords because of evictions and everything else. They assisted in evictions. They were there with their carbines, making sure that people were dumped out of their houses, and their houses were taken down, and if there was any trouble, they dealt with it. So they were a nasty group of people, but people joined it joined the force because it was a good way, a good living, and a lot of the better farmers were giving their sons, to join the force, but really was collaborating with the English authorities in subduing the Irish.
And of course, they got their name from.
Mr. Peel, Mr. Robert Peel. You know, the Irish for nicknames and everything else. When Peel brought in these group of people, they weren't consolidated until 1936, but he was the man that created them, and because he did, they got the name of Peelers after Robert Peel, and then Bobby's after his name, which was Robert. So both names, curricular names, come from Robert Peel.
And they're stuck.
And it's stuck forever and ever.
Over in England, they call them bobbies, don't they still?
They call them bobbies. That's the Irish influence.
But I don't think they call them peelers over there. It's only more up in this.
No, I think it's more in Ireland, the peeler, yeah.
And that song was first sung outside a church in 1830.
Really? Yeah.
By Darby Ryan.
Darby Ryan, yeah.
And he lived for 76 years. Fair play to him.
Yeah. He was a legend around the area, and that's for sure. He was, because there's still old guys that remembered him that we met, you know.
But he died in 1856, so to live to 76 back then was a ripe old age, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, don't be saying that.
No, back then.
Back then.
Well, look at they're looking to raise the pension to 70 now.
Yeah. Well, that's because they don't want to pay the poor old people.
I know, yeah. So I'll probably have 5 years of my life or 6 years of my life when I get retired. Anyway, so apparently down in Bansha now they still do a reenactment of that singing of the song.
Oh, did they?
The
that's great to hear.
And there's a small little festival that goes with it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I'd like to definitely like to go down and see it. But I think it's like a street play or something that goes on in Bansha.
Yeah. It was kind of a song for its time, you know, a protest song of its day, and. You know, the Peelers were hated by the Irish people, and, you know, they were Irish themselves. Most of them were Irish Catholic, and you had, the Irish Protestants were probably in the upper officer class, but mainly the lower class of the Bobby or Peeler was, you know, Catholic. And they knew the situation. They were never allowed, funny enough, to be stationed in their own area or in the area of their wives or families. So they had to be stationed in other parts of the country, which, you know, they couldn't let people off with anything, and they grew more aggressive. But they assisted evictions. They helped the tithe proctors collect the money for the tithes, and the animals were taken away as payment, and you know, it was kind of rough times on the poor farmers of Ireland, and you know, who were on the verge of starvation every year, and so you can't say they were forced there to protect the Irish people.
No, they definitely weren't forced to protect the Irish people. But do you think that they weren't allowed in their own area, police in their own area or their wives' family area, for fear of repercussions against the families?
I don't think. I think it was more a case of they might be lenient on some of the family members. Of course, it would have been, and I think that was probably the reason that they were not allowed to be stationed anywhere near their own hometown.
And how did you feel about? Was it 200 years they were celebrating there a couple of years ago?
Yeah, Charlie Flanagan tried to glorify the RIC. And, you know, he forgot, I think he forgot that, that in the memory of the Irish people was this awful image of the RIC evicting people and, the black and tans coming around and ransacking Ireland and, burning Balbriggan and the town of the city of Cork. They were horrific people, and I don't think they should be remembered. I heard stories about this policeman being killed here or that policeman being killed there. Well, it was never said that the policeman had killed somebody else in another area. It was kind of a one-sided effort. I didn't like it, and I went immediately to get rid of that idea, and it caught on, and we got the black and tans into number one in England. we got a number one in Australia, in Canada, and in Ireland. So there you go. That was thanks to Charlie Flanagan. We got number one all over the world.
So you didn't get the call for a gig off him.
But I mean, what a stupid idea! You know, I couldn't believe this guy. You know, what's he at? And then he had a thing up. You know that some black or it wasn't an RIC man, some kind of a black and tan guy or something. He was mentioning, and he tried to get in on the Black Lives Matter. That he was this guy that had been murdered by the IRA or whatever was a black guy. That didn't matter. I don't think the colour of his skin had anything to do with it, whether it was white or black. It was, you know, they were enforcing a law and subduing the Irish people. So why not? If you know, if a white guy was target, so you know, if he was wearing the uniform, he's still a target.
The uniform that's hanging.
The uniform that's hanging in what's known as Father's room.
So
yeah, and remember Sir Robert Peel too was he was Prime Minister during the famine. He was and one of the people that you might say didn't do anything to save the Irish people. He was there in the first part of the famine, 1846. And whatever he did bring in Indian corn, which is maize, into Ireland, 100,000 pounds worth of Indian corn to alleviate the loss of the potato crop. But it wouldn't have been even minutely substitute to potato. And it was just in the eyes of the world it looked grand. But at least there was some effort by him to do something. You know, I think it was John Mitchell said that for every shipload of Indian corn that came into Ireland, there was 20 ships going out with Irish food. So, you know, that's the difference between it. The Indian corn, people couldn't even cook it. They didn't know what it was. It was known as yellow.
Milling, didn't it?
Yeah, it was known as yellow brimstone. So that's what it did for their stomachs.
Right. And in 1844, 294,000 tons of grain was shipped just from Leinster alone. And in 1845, 485,000 tons of grain was shipped out of Leinster. Just Leinster alone, not counting Connacht or Munster.
Yeah, and you can imagine like people, you know, during the famine, people watching all this food leave the country while they had none. And that's the sadness of it. See the food leaving your country in cartloads of stuff and shiploads going out. And meanwhile, the Irish people were left with none.
Well, I was watching a programme last night. Simon Reeves travels through the Americas. And he was down in Ecuador. And there's actually, in parts of El Salvador and Ecuador, there's a famine going on out there at the moment. The people, the corn is failing over there because of climate change. Mm-hmm. And the people have nothing to eat. Like, it's unbelievable, like the poverty that they're living in down there. And that's why so many of them are pushing north to try and get into America. So it's a bit like it's like looking at what happened in the famine times, where the men are all leaving to try and get to work across to make that journey north.
Yeah, well, of course, like America wasn't even opened up properly then. Like they only knew the eastern states of America. Like I think the Irish pushed west and to Chicago and further, and then they pushed over to California during the gold rush and everything else like that. They became very successful in San Francisco and everywhere else. So, yeah, the Irish story is just a fascinating story.
I've enjoyed reading the book, and some of it, and it actually it does make you mad, and I was reading about, long before slave trade began, there was over 300,000 Irish people were slave traded to the Caribbean.
Yeah.
The Caribbean, and an Irishman in Bristol, in the slave market in Bristol, was worth £5 sterling, and a black guy from Africa would have been worth 50.
Yeah.
£50. So that shows you what the English thought of the Irish people, as a commodity, never mind as people.
Yeah, and you'd wonder, like, there was, I think, some of the plantation owners interbred the white Irish women with the blacks. Yeah,
I've seen that too.
And
there's different names for them.
Yeah, yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because there'd be more money.
Yeah,
and so like it's just a horrific story, isn't it? When you think the Irish, they never had any moments of peace since the invaders came to our country.
Yeah,
and how we survived, through all those years and all those tragedies and all those conquests, reconquests, land confiscations, everything else. It's a bloody miracle that any of us left at all. It really is.
But the sad thing about it is that not a lot of British people know this story, and I think there was a programme recently about the famine, and a lot of them were horrified as to what had happened and, what the monarchy at that time had done to Ireland, and they couldn't believe it, because they obviously don't get taught that in school. Everything about the empire is glorious and great. And so, it is sad that they don't know that story,
And I don't think they'll ever get to know it because, England likes to see itself as the civilizer of the world, and we brought here we brought civilization across the world, but I don't think the people they conquered regarded it as a civilization.
No. And if you walk around London, you see how beautiful the buildings are, and everything.
Well, that's another thing to mention. Just that when during the famine times, all the woods of Ireland belonged to the monarchy, and during the famine in Ireland, the woods were knocked down, and the money got for selling the wood was used to build Trafalgar Square.
Really?
Yeah. So that's how, not alone was Ireland starving, they were taking away wood to glorify Trafalgar Square.
Jeez.
While the Irish starved.
Yeah.
I always think of that when I go to Trafalgar Square.
That's a long time since. Well, no, it's not that long, actually.
Yeah.
With the way time's going at the moment, I'm not too sure where anything is. And the other thing that about the Peeler and the Goat, before we finish off on that, is the Recruit and Sergeant is the same tune, is it? Am I just thinking that?
Yeah, they're very similar. Probably is. That's one thing about I think a lot of Irish songs. I don't know which was the original.
But the
Bansha Peters, definitely the original. Yeah. It may be warm or Flanders, but the dark is in. It's the same bloody air.
That was like the Peeler and the Goat. It was like the helicopter song of its day. It just went, because it was so in vogue in the towns of Ireland.
Topical, yeah.
Yeah, it spread like wildfire.
Yeah,
So every town that a balladeer went had to know the Peeler and the Goat. Yeah. So it was a bit like the helicopter song. It just went gaga because of it being so topical of its time.
I mean, that's typical of the tradition that we're in, is that it's a living tradition, and the ballad singer always told the story of the day, whatever the topical story was. And of course, like when we were around, the helicopter came in, the helicopter escape, and that became a great song, great hit, #1. It was the fastest selling record of all time in Ireland, and it was #1 in like 3 days.
How long did it take you to write it?
I went to a pub after reading the story. We had to have a meeting in the office with Oliver Barry, and we were all laughing. It was a Saturday morning, and we were laughing about the escape. Like the whole of Ireland was laughing about it. The story was so funny and so wonderful and so great escape. In an unusual way. And I went into a pub for lunch after that, and sitting at the counter with a bowl of soup or something, and maybe a pint beside it, and
I'd say definitely a pint beside it. I wouldn't say maybe.
and out came a bit of paper and a pen, and I wrote it down. Sang it that night in Bundoran.
All right.
On Saturday night, and it went down a bomb. No, not a bomb. Went down great.
So you mean the whole band played it that night? Did
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Oh.
And
so you wrote it that day and you played it that night.
Played it that night. Yeah.
And you were saying to me that I write songs fast.
Yeah, but I think I played it. Probably played it. With the guitar at the time or whatever, and everyone joined in, and then we sang it again on Sunday. We recorded it on Monday night. The lads got very tired and they said, I'm leaving here and that's it, I've had it. And so I was left to be on to sing. I sing all the choruses, we doubled up. And we waited around till 6 o'clock in the morning. We were looking for a helicopter sound, and we got a helicopter sound around 6 in the morning. We packed our bags and went home. And it was out on Wednesday, and it was number 1 on Friday.
Wow, my God. That's unbelievable. And do you remember where you were playing in Bundoran?
Yes, we were playing in what's the name?
Was it one of the hotels?
It was
Great Southern or one of those.
A great guy too. What the hell was the name? Anyhow, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to force my brain to remember all that years ago.
And do you remember where the pub you had the sandwich and the pint and rode the bus? It must have been near Parnell Square, wasn't that where Oliver's?
Yeah, it was down Parnell Street there. Yeah. I think I know it was a kind of a ballad pub at the time. I used to go in all the time. The Parnell House.
Yeah, I was just going to say that because when you were playing in the Ambassador one time, we went in for a pint, and there you said I used to come in here for pints.
The Parnell House was. Yeah.
Very good.
Well, them were the days, I guess. Yeah.
And that was your first number 1.
What?
That was your first number 1.
That was our first number 1 record. Yeah, we'd been hitting the charts with with sort of lower numbers, but that just took off, and it was the only number 1 that RTE didn't play. Like I remember Larry Gogan used to do the top 10 years ago. Number 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Number 1 this week is the Wolf Tones. But what? Silence.
But did that help sales? Because normally when something was banned, like The Life of Brian or whatever, or Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Relax, it helped the sales of something, just because it makes people want it then.
Yeah, well, it was already selling huge. So like it probably brought more highlights to it. I know it sort of reached the papers, front page of one of the paper, Herald or Press, I don't know which. So it was the talk of the town, talk of the country at the time, and having something typically popular at the time and on the word. I have to say that everybody knew about it. Like it wasn't like. So it was on the tip of everybody's tongue, and that's why people went out and bought it. They thought it was great fun.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Yeah. And funny enough, I think it was the Fine Gael government at the time was in, and what's his name, Dowling. He was one of the TDs there, and he was the Minister for Justice, and I think I have him mentioned in song.
Yeah. The Minister for Justice was soaking up the sun.
And they're drinking gin and brandy and all that. They didn't like it at all.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
Yeah, they didn't like it at all.
But you didn't care. You had a number 1 in your back pocket.
I didn't care. Like, it was the truth anyhow. Who cares?
Yeah.
Let the people know. Let the people sing.
Yeah. And I was looking at yesterday, there was a poll there. Fianna Fail had dropped to 11% in the polls. Like, that's like when I was a kid, I remember Fianna Fail were just a massive party.
Yeah. She like 11%. I mean, some of the lesser known parties would have more than that.
Yeah. It's incredible to see a fall of a party like that. But I think, like, they've lost my vote since they went in with Fine Gael. Like, I just will never vote for. Like, I know, like, from my area anyway, I always vote for Sean Crowe from Sinn Féin. Not because Sinn Féin, but because he does a lot for the area. And I base my vote on that. And on the last election, I gave Fianna Fail number 2 and whatever, because I thought, they were always our party because you always voted for them. But now, after what they did in the last election, with joining up with Leo and that, and to get into government, to make a government, I would never vote for them again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the COVID thing and everything else, and the way the vaccines are rolled out in this country has everybody... I can't see them getting in again. I can't see them building up ever again. I think the next government is going to be a Sinn Féin government. That's the way I see it.
But only if they run enough candidates.
Yeah, I think the people, will have seen now, and they need to change. But that's the way it goes. Change happens, and for many, many reasons, and we accept whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll have another 3 years of the other 2 Egypts.
Yeah, well, yeah, I won't mention it. But anyhow, yeah, it is. When you have an unpopular government, it's terrible that you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You don't see. I mean, I have to say, for some of the things that happened in Ireland were pretty good. I mean, not all politicians are bad. Some of that last Fianna Fáil government were good, but they made terrible. They put us all into huge debt. At the end of the day, and they won't be remembered for any kind of kindness from history. No. So that's the fact of it. But we'll have a new gang coming in very, very shortly, I think. Yeah. I can't see it. I can't see the popularity of Micheál Martin coming up for the next election, because people are mad at him the way he rolled out the way he handled the whole COVID situation.
It's been very poor. Like, from my point of view, I think it's been very poor in the way it's been managed. But I suppose I'm not going. I seem to ask you this every week. But has anyone contacted you about getting your job yet?
No, I'm still waiting. They're doing all the old folks at the moment.
No, but just with your underlying issues, you would expect that you would be high.
Yeah, well, I was expecting the call. I haven't got it yet. My age group will come up in about a week's time, I think, and they'll start rolling out the over 70s. So, I look forward to getting it. Of course I do. The lock-up thing has been terrible, I'm out in the garden every day for a bit of air, but you get fed up with that too.
There's only so much gardening you can do.
You get fed up with it too. It's just,
I'm myself and Katrina are on 88 day of walking. We've walked every day since New Year's Day.
Really?
Yeah, 5k every day.
5k every day. Well, that's pretty good. Yeah.
So we're doing 100 days. We'll probably do more because it's just become part of. Yeah. Just keep the.
Well, I think everybody should try and get out and keep fit. Because it does cheer you up to get out there, hear the birds singing, see the daffodils, and this little spring there around. It's nice.
And then, of course, we had the wonderful match during the week.
Oh my God, will we ever forget it?
Well, the 2 matches, I suppose, if you talk about the Serbia one first, like the Serbia one sort of gave you hope. It was like they dangled a little carrot in front of you and you were going.
Yeah.
Because you saw, I felt like I was seeing green shoots, and I thought, we're making strides here. These young lads are going to come good.
Yeah.
And then we got this Saturday in Luxembourg.
Terrible, yeah.
And I remember 87, I said this to you the other day, we went to Lansdowne Road, myself, yourself, and Granda Mick from London. Mm. And that morning we went in, that afternoon we went in and you could buy your ticket in Elvery's on Suffolk Street. We went in, we bought our 3 tickets in Elvery's on Suffolk Street.
Yeah.
And I think we went down to O'Donoghue's or somewhere down that direction, or might have been the Bagadin or somewhere down there, and had a couple of pints down there and went into the game. and Luxembourg went 1-0 up. And Granda Mick was slagging the two of us because there was nobody in the ground. Like I'd say there was 26,000 maybe. In the old lands down the road, like the terraces were full, but the East Stand and the West Stand had nobody. Like we could have picked our seats in the West Stand. We were in the West Stand, very posh, and you must have paid for them because I'd normally be on the schoolboy and the South Terrace, and I think it was a Laco. Stapleton scored first, I think, with a header, and then we had a corner, and Paul McGrath hit a volley, and we won the game 2-1, and that was a brutal game. And I said, it can't get any worse than that, but it did on Saturday.
So Luxembourg is a kind of a bad omen for the Irish side.
Yeah, someone said, I can't believe we got beaten by a radio station.
For sure, yeah.
Radio Luxembourg. There was a pirate station, wasn't there? Called
no, it was a commercial station, and it was legit.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was legit. But what they did was they had these commercial stations like Luxembourg, and it was really run by the English, an English consortium or whatever.
Yeah.
And they just pushed out commercial music all over the place. It was great. When we were kids, like that was a choice of Luxembourg, Radio Air and BBC, whatever. And that was one of the, the choices that played pop music at the time. And we always gave it a listen. It was never on all the time. It was mostly RTE would be on mostly.
Yeah. I remember we had a big, huge radio in Lucan. Big brown thing, it had all the radio stations on it on the glass front.
Yeah.
And you could see like it was radio like Moscow and all these on
it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I do just flash back into my head there.
Yeah. Well, it
had huge big tubes and stuff in the back.
That's right. Yeah. It was a wonderful stereo unit in it. It was.
I'd say of its time it was.
It was fabulous sound of it. But when we were kids, I always remember my grandmother. She gave us a big radio, which was, bigger than televisions in today's, and that was the radio that we had down in the South Circular Road in the flat, and it was a huge thing altogether. And I always remember my father would be twiddling at the knobs and be going through, and then eventually he'd end up at something or whatever, and we'd be in bed at night and he'd be going through the station trying to find something or just messing around.
Long wave or short wave. I used to love that because I think I got one off Santa one time, a nice stereo with long wave and short wave on it. And if you found some really most obscure foreign station, you'd be delighted with yourself. Like
great stuff, yeah.
How easily we were pleased then.
Those were the days of radio. We never saw television till it was about 1960. Yeah, so it was like lots of people had television. We used to go down to my auntie's house to watch television.
Yeah.
And so, it was kind of a new thing. I always remember going down to the pictures in the Inchicore cinema, and we were going down the road anyhow, and there was a big house across the Comac, across the valley, and it had this big mast up at this thing up. Huge big mast, and I said to one of the bigger fellas at the time, I probably got about 9 or something, and I said, "What's that big mast up there for?" He says, "That's television." I said, "What?" "That's television." He said, "You know when you listen to the news on the radio, instead of listening to the news, you can watch what's happening." I said, "You're joking me." "No way. You can actually see the pictures of the man talking and everything." Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So there you go, that was television, and we didn't see it till 1960. In our house.
That old cinema down in Inchicore, is that where Tesco is now down there?
It's flat still. I don't know what's underneath at the bottom. Yeah, I think Tesco might be, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know there's flats over it. But I was seeing Inchicore Cinema, and...
what was it called?
It was called the Core. We used to call it the Core, yeah. But you could get in there for 2 jam jars.
What was 2 jam jars?
Well, Lamb's Jam Factory was in Bluebell there, and you see, for a jam jar you had. If it was a pound jam jar, you get a penny, and if it was a half-pound jam jar, you got a halfpenny.
Right.
So it was twopence into the woodeners, and so you could get into the wooden seats for 2 jam jars, twopence.
And they had wooden seats, like benches, were they?
They were like benches in the front, yeah.
I'd say you're
And then they were at the very front, so your neck was nearly broken looking up at the screen. You had to bend down to look up, and everything.
What was your favourite movie as a kid?
Well, Oddie Murphy was outside. He had his horse packed outside the Inchicore cinema there all the time.
Oddie Murphy, the actor?
Actor, yeah. In those movies, of course, we had, I always remember, like, if when we were at the matinee, the kids on a Saturday, whatever, if a love scene came up, everybody started talking, like, you hear all the kids. And when the accent stopped, everybody would be real quiet. There wouldn't be a word spoken, but when the love scene, where'd you go, that scene? Be all that ruffle of talk. We didn't like the love scenes, we wanted action.
Yeah. And was there much smoking in the cinema?
No, not in the matinees, no. But if you went there at night, everybody was smoking. Yeah.
I remember that when I was like people be smoking in the cinema.
Oh, for God's sake, it should be cloud of smoke.
Yeah. So, like, for me as a kid, the movie that I remember most would have been Star Wars. Like, so you must have had a movie that stands out that was. I'd say either Star Wars or Jaws. I remember Jaws frightened the shite out of me as a kid. Jerry Murray and Walter brought it to me and Siobhan, I think, to Adelphi to see it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't go in. Actually, it might have been the Savoy. I wouldn't go in because I heard everybody roaring when because the previous movie wasn't over. The previous showing wasn't over, and I was like, I'm not going in there.
Yeah, well, what would be? Yeah, I think there are a couple of movies that stuck out in my mind. One was The Quiet Man. I liked that. The other one was I remember The Longest Day was one.
That's a great movie.
Yeah. Big, kind of a blockbuster thing. The Dam Busters was another blockbuster thing. The Bridge Over the River Kwai. Then the musicals. I always remember my mother brought me down because she wanted to see this movie and my father wouldn't go with her, whatever. He didn't like the movie, whatever. And it was one of these musical things. What was it? Can't remember the thing now, but it was all in the desert. The Desert Song. That's what it was. The Desert Song.
Never heard of it.
I think whenever my father wouldn't go, I was brought along to be bored by an awful movie.
Oh, well, still.
Well, they thought it was great, But I love Singing in the Rain. I still love that movie.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it is, I did meet Donald O'Connor. We played at a show.
Yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, I met him. So eventually, I met someone I loved going to the movie, and he used to do the talking horse thing. It wasn't one that was done on television, but Donald O'Connor used to do it, and I loved the guy. I thought he was a fantastic.
I'm writing that down now. I'm gonna check that out on YouTube when I go home.
Everybody there, check it out.
The talking
horse.
Horse.
Yeah, the talking horse.
Donald O'Connor.
Yeah, he was famous. He was famous for that role, and not alone that role, but he was a wonderful character actor, and he, of course, loved his Irish background, and he was great with Gene Kelly in
Singing in the Rain.
Yeah,
I've never watched
Singing in the Rain. I just loved it.
I've never watched it.
Did you not?
I've never.
I love the spot where he runs up the wall and back down.
I've seen that, obviously.
Yeah,
see clips of that, but I've never actually sat down and watched it.
And the storyline is quite nice. It's a story about the silent movies are over, and the big stars don't know whether they're going to, go into the talking, and you know, and this big star, woman star, she has this give me my they don't want her in the movie. Of course, Debbie Reynolds there comes. She does the background. She's talking for the actress behind the screen. So I got a great laugh out of that.
Easter weekend coming up, I might give it a look just to.
Yeah, but it's worth the while. I love that movie. It's a great movie. But I did like musicals, and you know, some of them were too adult for me. But you know, the lighter ones I enjoyed.
The one I remember as a kid was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Chitty Chitty Bang, yeah, you know, that was a good one too.
And I remember the first time at the end of that movie in the credits there was a Warfield mentioned, and we were all fascinated to see a Warfield mentioned because we only knew the Warfield family in Ireland, like, you know. So there's
not the only Warfield. There's someone else in the movies.
Well, that's what we thought, you know. It was just there's her name.
There's your name there.
Yeah.
I remember there was the guy who sang, not Paul Robeson, but the guy who sang in the movie Old Man River, and his name was Warfield. He's a black guy now, but I don't think he was a relative, but you never know.
Well, and then there's the Warfield Theatre in America, isn't there?
Yeah, well, funny enough, the Warfields, you know, a lot of Warfields in America, and some of them over the years got in touch with us as we went around. Baltimore was a big spot for the Warfields. They owned the First Bank of Baltimore.
Yeah.
And they also owned the Baltimore Orioles.
Right.
Yeah. And we had the families came to us at various times. Some of them in Connecticut, some of them in New York and Philadelphia, and you know, they were related to Wallace Warfield. Wallace Warfield was. You know, Wallace Simpson.
King Edward abdicated.
King Edward abdicated for. He fell in love with a Warfield, but her maiden name was Warfield. She married Simpson, Colonel Simpson, wherever he was, and then she. I don't know how she fell in love, or he fell in love with her, but he obviously was besotted by her, and he gave up everything for her, and. You know, that's the Warfields. Watch out.
Bit like Harry now with Meghan.
But they never mention, you know, when they talk about Wallace Simpson, they never mention anything about her name being Warfield. I very, very rarely hear that. Yeah. They always say Mrs. Simpson, you know.
Yeah. I think that's to bring home that she was a married woman.
She's a married woman, yeah.
So we're nearly at 48 minutes now, so unless you want to tell me about your week in the garden.
My week has been the same as every other week. And
actually, do you know what? What are we going to do for Easter? Easter is coming up today we're Monday the 29th, and Easter's Good Friday and Friday, and it's your birthday. Yeah. So we might do something on Friday.
We do something live or whatever. We'll think of something.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to put ourselves on Patreon, where you can get extra content, and if you want to sign up to that, we'll give you more details on it. And also I want to give a big shout out because we've now hit, I think, 29 countries, and the new countries that we've been listening to is Brazil, Poland, France, Austria, Holland, Jamaica and Switzerland. So big shout out to all our friends over there that are listening, and I hope you keep listening. Yeah,
keep listening there, and it's amazing that it's a small world now, and it's great to have people all over the world having a listen in.
Absolutely. So next episode, Dad, I don't have my book with me. I forgot it, but I have it written down. But I think it's the sash.
Oh, it was old and it.
So we'll definitely have a lot to talk about with that one.
Absolutely, yeah. I look forward to that now.
Yeah. That's if I'm right now. I could be wrong. I'm well known to be wrong.
Well, it's coming up soon, anyway.
All right, so we'd say goodbye for now, and thanks again for listening, and we will don't forget to pass, if you like what you heard, pass this on to your friends or family, and we try and get our listenership up and keep it going higher. All right, thanks again for listening. So it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye for me.
Slán.